We have been here in chapter 17 and 18. 17, we've covered most of it, talking about what John saw. He saw a woman riding a beast. Forgive me, to some degree of review here. John writes in chapter 17, verse 1. One of the seven angels who have the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, I'll show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters." I want to remind you, John saw, or was told, he was going to see the judgment. The angel told him, "I'm going to show you the judgment of the great harlot, the great whore." I maintain that that ought to be contrasted with the bride, the other female subject that is relevant to us in the New Testament. And we'll see that certainly at the end of the book of Revelation. The bride of Christ, the church, the true church. Contrasting the true church with a false church. The great harlot, a false religion, a corrupt religious system that poses as the bride. And so this great harlot, who sits on many waters, has worldwide influence. Worldwide. In verse 2 says, "With whom the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality. And those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality." I won't elaborate. I talked about that last Sunday evening. But all of the nations had business with this harlot that the angel speaks of. All. And there's only one religious institution on earth that actually has embassy in every nation. Only one religious leader that every world leader has business with, and that happens to be the Pope, and has been that way for a very long time. And that's significant in this, conceptually. There's no other harlot, no other woman posing as the bride that this could actually be applying to. I said last week, I'll jump to it again now, that not only am I suggesting that the Roman Catholic Church is the great harlot, I am saying that on the other side of the rapture of the church and every true believer taken out of that very corrupt system, and there are true Christians within it, especially far away from the Vatican. The further away you get from the Vatican, the more you will actually run into genuine believers who love the Lord and love him so much. Despite the fact that it's unnecessary, but some, Pope, because the Pope, issued an edict, they have unfortunately believed that in order for them to serve the Lord, they got to make a vow of celibacy. They can't ever marry. I say that corrupt system only produces two kinds of priests and only two kinds of nuns. The kind that love the Lord so much that they will pass on family and romance on earth. The other kind, intentionally perverted, corrupt, and it's not a priority to them anyway. And I tell you, they're both present in this system. But what happens after all those who really know the Lord and really love the Lord are mass evacuated out? If you believe as I do, that before the Lord really pours out judgment on this earth, he will remove his ambassadors. If you believe that, as I do, what's left when they're taken out is all awful evil. And I really do believe that what will sort of fill the vacuum of all those true believers is a massive, truly eclectic and man-centered religion. There will be the religion of the Antichrist, this one-world religion. I think it'll take the machinery, it'll fill the offices vacated in that system that already exists. So in a sense, the one-world religion is the harlot, but I think that the one-world religion will be the final state of the Church of Rome. And I think Rome is Babylon. I'll try to make that case. I want to be fair about it. I say again, I have known genuine Christians in that very corrupt system. And even they, the very genuine Christians that I know that their system is intensely corrupt. They will acknowledge that. So, kings of the earth, they were made drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality. So John, then he describes the vision. Verse 3, he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And then I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. That's the description of the beast. She's sitting on it, riding it. A world religion that will actually ride a world ruler to greater power. There's a woman riding that beast. And that beast we've already been introduced to. That beast is the Antichrist. That beast is a man of sin. The woman, not coincidentally, is described in ways that you've got to think of the Vatican when you hear it. She's clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, and having in her hand a golden cup. Their emphasis upon the cup in the Eucharist as they teach it, and transubstantiation, their obsession, I believe it's alluded to there. She has a golden cup. A gold cup full of abominations and the unclean things of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery. On her forehead, and this is how the LSB translates this. On her forehead a name was written, a mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. And it's from that I would ask you to consider the contrast with me for a moment. A mystery. Babylon the Great. So I don't think it's literal Babylon the Great, but I think it's Babylon as a concept. Babylon is a concept that ought to be contrasted with the city of God. Now, go back to Genesis chapter 11, and let's look at the sort of the concept of first mention. After the worldwide judgment of God in the days of Noah, we read in Genesis chapter 11 of something coming together that was quite contrary to what God had commanded the survivors of that judgment. God had commanded them, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth in Genesis chapter 9. Spread out, fill the earth. We have the table of nations in Genesis chapter 10. And then in chapter 11, we read these words. The whole earth had the same language, the same words. And it happened as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and they had tar for mortar. And they said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. Let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Let's not be scattered. Let's do something. Let's build us something. And they rallied together. They had a leader, of course. He was Nimrod, and he was described in Scripture as a hunter, sort of in the face of God. It was man-centered. Let us make us a tower, all this us. They were pulling together and rallying to do something contrary to what God commanded about filling the earth, spread out. They said, unless we be scattered. And so it began there. Now, again, nobody is, I don't think you should be silly enough to think that God had any reason to interrupt this project for fear that they would get into heaven, that they would arrive there by means of a tower. That's not the point. Dr. Henry Morris, founder of the Institute for Creation Research, writes, in my opinion, the best commentary on the book of Genesis that is available. Dr. Morris points out that what they were building, this ziggurat that they built, was a focal point of their obsession with the stars, with the heavens. It's a tower unto, not a tower to get into. A tower to get into would be absolutely impossible. It would be futile. There's no reason for God to have to stop it. You can only go up structurally so high before your structure falls apart. You only have so much time. The air gets so thin. We're not made to go outside our atmosphere. You can't build a tower from the earth to heaven. It wasn't an attempt to get to heaven. It was a tower unto the heavens. Sort of deification of humanity and the obsession with whatever, pagan concepts they might invent with regard to the stars and the constellations. Frankly, I believe that even before this, even before the worldwide flood, that Noah and his family knew of what later the book of Job refers to as the Hebrew, what later became known as the zodiac. Mazaroth, thank you, brain. The Hebrew Mazaroth, the book of Job. God speaks of the Mazaroth. What is the Mazaroth? Best understanding of the Mazaroth is that all of the constellations have been the same all through human history. Somebody came up with them, and they didn't come up with them because the constellations look like a shape. It's not like the cloud game where you're sitting with a friend or a family member and you go, what do you see in the clouds? And you see various, I see a stallion. Where? Yeah, I see the head over there, and oh, yeah, I can kind of see that. I can make that out. Not that game. They didn't do that with the stars, with the constellations. But instead, they had a story they wanted to tell, and they used constellations and created characters. But what is that story? Well, I happen to believe that that story is a story of redemption. And it's prophecy. It's a story that includes the very first prophecy of all prophecies in Genesis 3:15 that God gave in Eden of a Savior, one male descendant of the woman that would crush the head of the serpent. But he, in the process, would have his bruised heel. And consequently, there's a character that, the Greeks, in their zodiac, they called him Achilles. And what's he known for? But his heel problem. And there's a great beast, a great serpent, a seven-headed hydra. All of that, those characters there. And again, without going into the whole thing, only one female character. No matter which civilization, which culture, which pagan belief system, there's only ever been one of those constellation characters that is a female, and she is Virgo, the virgin. The very fact that the prophets, the Hebrew prophets, were told that one day a virgin would conceive. I believe that whole story, the story of God's redemption, is told in the stars, and it got hijacked and paganized. And by Genesis chapter 11, the citizens of this city they pulled together are obsessed with the worship of all of those things. Idolatrous. But this, they said, let us build for ourselves a city, a tower whose top will reach into heaven. Let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Yahweh said, behold, they are one people. They all have the same language. And this is what they've begun to do. Now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible to them. That is a statement of the danger of world unification. The world has been divided and was divided by God. He involved himself and brought division. And the division's been necessary. I mean, we got problems. But think about how much worse the world would be if we were all united. If there was, in fact, a one world government, a one world religion, a one world money system, economy. Well, that day will come. But it's been prevented up until this modern age. And now we have the capacity to overcome the Babel effect and communication, data storage, supercomputers, artificial intelligence, and all of this, undoing, in a sense, the Babel effect for the very end time. So there's this period of time. You guys get this. There's a period of time that we refer to as the tribulation. We refer to the 7-year period that is divided into 2 3.5-year periods. It is the tribulation. It's a time of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble specifically. There's so much to say on that. But I want you to think about this and contrast the symbol. It's the symbolism. Contrast the symbol of this tower, this unification sort of focal point for a rebellion that was really rather quickly after the judgment of God, worldwide judgment. The survivors and the offspring from that near, near total extinction of humanity, which, by the way, I got to say this, in case nobody's told you, the study of genetics has validated that history. The study of genetics, specifically, if you can research it yourself, the study of mitochondrial DNA reveals the whole sort of story of human history. And the geneticists refer to this one period of time in ancient history. They call it the bottleneck of the family tree, because it was a worldwide population that were reduced to a few survivors and then back out to a big worldwide population once again. Very few survivors, only 8 people. So it happened. And not long after all of that happened, the rebellion is led once again, and God interrupts. God interrupts and divides humanity. But contrast, would you please, Babylon as a concept. Contrast its ziggurat, its tower. Contrast that with what we'll see in Genesis chapter 28. Turn over there. Genesis chapter 28. God dealing with the patriarch, Jacob. Genesis chapter 28. Jacob's on the run. Jacob, he is grandson of the guy that God chose, Abraham. God said, I'm going to bless you, I'll make a nation of you. Apple cider in the fall. Staying hot. Jacob, Genesis chapter 28, verse 10. Then Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he reached a certain place. And he spent the night there because the sun had set. Took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he had a dream. And behold, a ladder stood on the earth with its top touching heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. All right, so the LSB translates it ladder, and then also in footnotes offers the alternate translation of stairway. A stairway, a connection. A ladder, there was a connection that Jacob sees in a dream. It stood on the earth, but it reached to heaven. And angels, the angels of God, the good ones, are ascending and descending. The traffic is happening on this thing that Jacob sees in his dream. In verse 13, behold, Yahweh stood above it and said, I am Yahweh, the God of your father Abraham, the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your seed. And your seed will also be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and in your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Well, there's more to it, but, Jacob wakes up and goes, wow, man, this is the house of God. He named the place that still to this day is called Bethel. El is Hebrew for the word God. It's not a name, it's a noun, it's a thing. Beth, house. Bethel, house of God. That's how profoundly Jacob was affected by what he saw. In contrast to a man-centered project, a tower that reaches under heaven, God shows Jacob a ladder, stairway, a bridge. And there's actual traffic on it. Now go to John chapter 1, please. Join me there. Let me point out to you, as I've done many times, I know, repetition, well, it's what I do. Not just what old men do, it's what Bible teachers do. John chapter 1. There's these two guys, Nate and Phil. I love talking about these guys. Nathaniel and Philip, Nate and Phil. So we read verse 44 of chapter 1. John 1:44. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. And he found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." That's how you identified. You identified somebody back then by whose kid you were, you have a surname, whose son you are, and where you're from. Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph. Philip's got a lot to learn. He only knows he's found the Messiah. He's real excited. He tells Nate. Nathanael's response, verse 46, and you're familiar with it. Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? It sounds like an absurdity. Ridiculous. You might as well have said, it's Jesus of Skowhegan. Or worse, it's Jesus of Lewiston. That's our, we all pick on Lewiston, rough town. It's Jesus of Lewiston. Have you heard that? You go, you have got to be kidding me. I don't know, maybe it's worse. Maybe it's more, it's Jesus of Medibemps. Medibemps? There's a place called Medibemps. The part that you don't know in the story, until you get to the end of the story, is that Phil went looking for Nate. And when he found Nate was alone, and Nate knew he was alone. You guys, Nate was alone under a fig tree. And it's kind of wide open space out there where it was. He knows there's nobody around. And he clearly was calling out to God and going, God, do you hear me? Do you even see me? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever thought, God, are you involved in this world at all? Are you even involved in, what about everything? What about all the trouble in the world? What about Rome? What about all the promises and Messiah and all that stuff? Where is all of that? God, do you hear me? Do you even see me? And he hears, Nathanael. That's just Phil. Phil's all excited. What, Phil? What? And Phil's all, we found the Messiah. Jesus of Lewiston. Can anything good come out of Lewiston? Good question. Well, look at how the story goes. And I know that's all I know that. I can tell you for sure. Can anything good come out of Lewiston? Well, Philip said something really smart. He said, come and see. I don't have to stand here and argue with you about that. You come see for yourself. Come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and he said about him, behold, an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. That dude right there is a true descendant of Israel. Who's Israel? Israel's that guy Jacob. Got a name change later after Genesis 28. In Genesis 32, he gets his name changed from Jacob to Israel. That is a true son of that guy. Nothing fake in him. That's a true son of Israel. And there's no deceit in him. Nathanael said to him, from where do you know me? And the Lord's answer blew his mind. That's how I know the scenario that I just described happened. Because Jesus answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Philip's reaction is Nathanael's reaction is so extreme. Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You're the King of Israel. That's a massive leap unless you know that you are completely alone. You're calling out in prayer, God, do you see me? Do you see me? Do you hear me? Is there a connection? Is there any connection between heaven and earth at all? Because Nathanael's reaction when the Lord said before Philip came, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. That's how I know he had to be going, do you see me? his mind-blowing experience. And so the Lord goes, wow. Hey. Verse 50, Jesus answered him and said to him, because I said to you that I saw you under the fig tree, you believe? You'll see greater things than these. He said, Nate, you ain't seen nothing yet. And he said to him, look at what he said to him, verse 51. He said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see the heavens opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Nathanael is a real son of Israel. Israel saw angels ascending and descending on a stairway, a ladder. There's a connection between heaven and earth. And he saw traffic, angelic traffic, the angels of God. And Jesus of Nazareth just said to him, you will see heaven's open. And you'll see angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man. That is a statement you must not miss. The Son of God calls himself the Son of Man. What a humble statement. Calls himself the Son of Man, and he says, I am the connection. That's what he just identified himself as. The connection between heaven and earth. There is a connection. God is involved with humanity. And the connection is the Son of Man. Hallelujah. The perfect bridge from heaven to earth is the God-man. The God-man. Our Lord Jesus is God. He is man. He is the perfect high priest. He's the perfect mediator. And there is, according to 1 Timothy 2:5, only one God and only one mediator between God and man. That is the man, Christ Jesus. So please recognize the contrast between the Tower of Babel, which becomes then symbolic for all of those human endeavors to exalt humanity, all of the man-centered projects all through history, and the man-centered cities. Let's talk about that for just a moment. Cities versus what? Rural regions. All through the history of the world. It's always been this way, only always. The great cities of humanity have all been Babel in one sense. They're all centered in humanity. It is a reality. You guys all know that to this very day. This is not new. To the day in which you and I live. They're completely different philosophies, a completely different world and value system of the same species. Us all living together in great cities. No, we don't just become super liberal. We become godless. It is being surrounded by the stuff of man, where even when you look up, you're still seeing more of man's workmanship. It produces a very different thing. It is certainly, the city life with all of the things of this world. It's just very worldly. All of the entertainment, all of the pleasures, all the prosperity, all of the business, and what the old English word used to mean by traffic, actual trafficking. It's all happening in the big city. It's not that outside the cities we're innocent or sinless. But there is a difference, and always has been, a difference between the thinking of those who live out in the farmlands and interact with nature, and they're under the big sky. There's a humbling effect of being out from under the stuff of man and man's exaltation. It's a weird philosophy that just develops as a result of being just so confident in man. Look at what we can build. Look at what we are. There's a reason. There's a reason why this nation is divided, and the divide is not regional like the Mason-Dixon line. It's urban versus rural. But I say again, it's not new. Benjamin Franklin wrote the same observation in the 1700s of the nation in its infancy. And by the way, he wrote it from Philadelphia, acknowledging even then, a couple centuries back, that, man, humans are very different in the cities than they are out in what we call the country. All through the history of the world, Babylon, ever since Genesis chapter 11, has been sort of symbolic for the efforts of man-centered thinking. And I'm telling you, the kingdom of Antichrist, it's going to differ from the kingdom of the true Christ, because it is, even the Antichrist himself, his name has a numerical value. We've been given that already. We'll see it again here in the book of Revelation. The 666 is the numeric value of his name, but even that's not coincidental, because it's a man's number. The number for man is 666. The number of perfection, 7. And biblical immorality, and the number of man is 6. At his very best, always falling short of perfection. It's man's number. And I'm telling you, the religion of Antichrist will be a man-centered religion, and ultimately, there'll be one character that presents himself to humanity as the most evolved, highest ascended, the ultimate, the epitome of what we all can be. I submit to you that Antichrist will not be so much about the devil, though he is Satan's man. He'll be soliciting worship to himself in these cities. Back to Revelation, a mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots. I submit to you that there will be the ultimate expression of what was a concept, a project interrupted in Genesis chapter 11, that will be resumed full throttle in the very end of time and under the reign of one who considers himself the ultimate man. So there are those who debate, guys who know a lot, smarter people than me, speculate that it's going to be actual rebuilt Babylon. Some speculate there's going to be a couple different locations that sort of center of Antichrist reign. Some suspect there'll be a city that is the religious center. There'll be another city that's the economic center, and another that perhaps is the seat of his government. And some will argue that chapter 17 and chapter 18, I got good friends that do, like Gary Hamrick. I was checking him out, his teaching on the subject this afternoon, and Gary is among those who think Babylon means Babylon, that the ancient ruins will be rebuilt. You guys all know it was being attempted in the 80s and right up until the 90s, and the Gulf War ended that. And it was real low rent, cheesy, like Saddam Hussein, who really desperately wanted to be some kind of a reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. He had this really gaudy version that he was attempting, but it was absolutely destroyed, crushed. The ruins of the Tower of Babel are still there in the ruins of Babylon. And so, there are those who think that the Antichrist will establish a world economic center. And certainly that's a possibility, and it can happen. And man, with modern means, you can throw up a city fast now, really fast. I personally don't. I personally believe that Babylon mystery, Babylon the Great, it's a mystery from 1705. It's a mystery, Babylon the Great. It's not any great mystery if it's actual physical Babylon built on the ruins of the Tower of Babel. I actually believe it's something more significant. It is the man-centered version of what Rome will become under the leadership of Antichrist. So back to Revelation chapter 17, we read already in verse 6 that I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. That is, I said at the end of the study last week, pagan Rome was the original intense persecutor. 3 million Christians in the first 3 centuries. But what was called Christian Rome also continued to slaughter. Later, particularly later, in response to the Protestant Reformation, burned so many at the stake, beheaded, killed, tortured. The Inquisitions, there's so much blood associated with what is called Christian Rome. It was not real Christian. John sees that, and the angel said to me, because John said in verse 6, when I saw her, I wondered greatly. He wondered greatly because John hadn't seen any of that yet. It hadn't developed yet. John said, I wondered greatly. And the angel said to me, why do you wonder? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So the angel explains it. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. Come out of the abyss, on his way to the lake of fire. It's just passing through. That's not a human spirit. The beast is not a human spirit. They don't come up out of the abyss. Well, there is a spirit imprisoned in the abyss that has been on earth before and will return, but it's on his way somewhere, and that is to destruction, to the lake of fire. And those who dwell on the earth, whose names has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. You dig into that in yourself, and there's only one primary city known on earth as the city of 7 hills. That could fit this description. It's Vatican City. I'll say again, I'm not simply stating that the Roman Catholic Church is the great harlot. I am stating that. But I'm stating that that great harlot, that corrupt system, will experience a mass evacuation of all genuine Christians. And even during the tribulation, we'll see in chapter 18, God calls to his people, come out from her, my people, that you share in her fate. So that'll happen even during the tribulation. There will be genuine people of faith, people of genuine faith in it. I believe that it will be invaded. And surely you guys are aware that our most recent popes have been massive ecumenicists, seeking to unite world religions. You guys do know that, right? You watch enough news to know. You know that joke. It's kind of a joke. Instead of just saying, yeah. So what do you want to go get something to eat? Is the Pope Catholic? Right? Well, that's the question legitimate Christians in the church, Catholic Church, have been asking for the last several popes. Is the Pope Catholic? That's a good question. That's what they're asking. Is he? Because he wants to be the leader of world ecumenicism. So, city of 7 hills. I know I covered this. He says here, 7 heads are the 7 mountains, verse 10, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. One is, the other is not yet come. When he comes, he must remain a little while. Talked about that last week. A real little while. It's actually just a 7 year. It's a blip. It's a tiny speck in human history. 7 years. A little while. Verse 11, the beast, which was and is not, is himself also an 8th. It is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. 10 horns, which you saw 10 kings, who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. So there are 10 very significant sort of government officials that aren't kings, but they become kings in their union, in their league with this one world ruler, the Antichrist. But it's, they're going to receive authority as kings for the beast for 1 hour. And in that sense, I really believe it means this particular short period of time. Even as we just read, a little while. He must continue a little while. It's like an hour in the big picture. In verse 13, these have one purpose. They give their power and authority to the beast. They'll wage war against the Lamb. Imagine how the angel said this. They're going to wage war against the Lamb. You believe that? And the Lamb will overcome them because he's Lord of lords and King of kings. Those who are with him are called. and elect and faithful. Not much of a show, not much of a fight. It's not one worth paying money to see. Wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. Verse 15, he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. The 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot and will lay waste to her and make her naked and will eat her flesh and burn her up with fire. So at some point, this league between the one world government and this one world religion falls all apart, and those 10 kings turn on her, the harlot, the religious system, and they attack the statement. They make her naked, eat her flesh, burn her with fire. Again, I think it's another suggestion with regard to communion as they perverted it into transubstantiation. They'll eat her flesh, they'll burn her up with fire. And as we get into chapter 18, there's a good case to be made that the destruction will be potentially nuclear. I'll read that in verse 17. God gave it in their hearts to do his purpose, both by doing their own common purpose, by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be finished. And the woman you saw, and this is that final statement on this, is the great city, which has a kingdom over the kings of the earth. Can I point out to you something that you might not have considered? World empires have risen and fallen. The king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, back in the book of Daniel, first couple chapters, chapter 3 specifically, he's given a dream, and God shows him in that dream, which Daniel has to interpret. A succession of world empires are going to happen. You guys know this one. He showed him a dream. The interpretation of the dream was a succession of world empires, each world empire inferior to the one that came before it. God actually speaks to the prophet Daniel and says, you, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, you're the head of gold. You are a king of kings. You've got absolute authority. You're a total monarch. But after you, your kingdom won't last forever. Another kingdom will rise. It won't even be as awesome as yours. It'll be inferior. And then one after that, inferior. So each of those world empires, just as Daniel interpreted, were overthrown and replaced by another world empire, except for the last one. I point out to you that the last world empire in that vision is a revived version of the second to the last world empire. It represents these 2 legs of iron, the great statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw. And it was the Roman Empire, divided east from west, just as 2 legs, represented by iron. A revived version of it is indicated in the vision by the feet of that great statue being iron and clay mixed, and it's got 10 toes. I'm just trying to point out to you that the Roman Empire was not actually ever conquered or ever replaced. Other world empires rose, but they rose while Rome was still an empire. And in a very real sense, the Roman Empire continues to this very day through Catholic Church, through the Vatican. Are you tracking with me? It has always continued. It continues to have an embassy. It continues to have one who considers himself an emperor. So you've got other world empires, the British Empire, the Ottoman Turk, the Byzantine Empire, all these. You've had empires rise and fall. Some of them were even more vast in their landmass, but Rome continued through all of that to be a player and continues to this day. So when you read that description, the woman you saw is the great city which has a kingdom over the kings of the earth. Yeah. Chapter 18, verse 1, John said, after these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. I can't wait to experience that worldwide illumination. He cried out with a mighty voice. John keeps saying that all the way through the book of Revelation. Sometimes he said he cried with a loud voice. This one he cried with a mighty voice. I'm looking forward to hearing these angels, man. I'm looking forward to hearing what John heard. A mighty voice saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. And she has become a dwelling place of a dwelling place that is of demons, and a prison of every unclean spirit, and a prison of every unclean bird, and a prison of every unclean and hateful beast." It's a picture. Babylon has fallen, and in the destruction, she's become a prison. Demons, unclean spirits, birds, scavenger birds, every unclean bird, every unclean and hateful beast, a place of monsters. Verse 3, "For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the power of her sensuality." Sounds familiar, what we've already read, except now we're reading of the destruction of that city, the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate dream of Nimrod and those who started this in Genesis chapter 11. Verse 4, "I heard another voice from heaven saying, 'Come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive of her plagues.'" I find that interesting, and that is in the tribulation, when there are tribulation saints. In the tribulation, when there are still people coming to faith, they're on the run, they can't buy or sell. But think about this reality, that even then, there are people that God will say through this voice from heaven, "Come out of her, my people," so you won't share in her fate. Verse 5, "For her sins have piled up as high as heaven." Now, what does that sound like? As high as heaven? Doesn't it sound very much like Babel of Genesis chapter 11? Her sins have piled up, not in her tower, but the offenses themselves, as high of heaven. "And God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back, even as she paid. Give her back double according to her deeds. And the cup she has mixed double for her, to the degree that she glorified herself and lived sensuously. To the same degree give her torment and mourning, for she says in her heart, 'I sit as a queen.'" Does that ring a bell to any of you guys who came up in the Catholic Church and you kept hearing terms about Mary, Queen of Heaven? The obsession with the feminine divine is characteristic of Roman Catholic Church. Now, just for the record, I keep saying the word Catholic Church. Catholic just means the word universal. And I maintain that we Christians, whose faith is based on the Scripture, believe what the Catholic Church abandoned. We believe what they believed at first when it all began. But man, they got bought and they got corrupted and they drifted so far. She says, "I sit as a queen." She says in her heart, "I sit as a queen, I'm not a widow, and I will never see mourning. For this reason," verse 8, "in one day her plagues will come, pestilence, mourning, and famine, and she'll be burned up with fire, for the Lord God who judges her is strong." Now, I don't know what form this judgment will come. It is not unusual for God to use war or even the tools of war as a form of judgment, but he's not limited to that. And what God does with this city, he could very well do supernaturally or naturally supernaturally. There's plenty of things during the Great Tribulation that are really, truly catastrophic and cosmic. A lot of things colliding with the planet. I have no idea how God is going to do it, but that he is going to do it. Verse 9 says, "The kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived sensuously with her will cry and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning. Standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment. Standing at a distance, not coming into it, because that's how awful the destruction is. Fear of her torment, saying, 'Woe, woe to the great city Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come.' The merchants of the earth cry and mourn over her, because no one buys her cargo anymore. cargo of gold and silver, and precious stones and pearls, and fine linen, purple and silk and scarlet, and every kind of citron wood, and every article of ivory, every article made from precious wood and bronze and iron and marble, cinnamon and anamum, and incense and perfume and frankincense and wine and olive oil and fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and cargo of horses and carriages and human beings and human lives. And the fruit you long for is gone from you. And all things that were splendid and shining have passed away from you, and men will no longer find them. The merchants of these things who became rich from her stand at a distance because of the fear of her torment, crying and mourning, saying, Woe, woe to the great city, she who was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great wealth has been laid waste. Every shipmaster, every passenger and sailor, and as many as make their living by the sea stood at a distance, were crying out as they saw the smoke of it burning, saying, What is like the great city? It's funny, that's what they were saying about Antichrist, the beast. Who is like the beast? So how this is going to work out, is this going to be actual Babylon built on the Euphrates? I don't know. I'd rather think not. I think it's Vatican City itself. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have a port. It doesn't matter that, but from the great distance, looking toward the land, they see the smoke of it burning. And they are crying, what is like the great city? Verse 19, they threw dust on their heads and were crying out, crying and mourning and saying, Woe, woe to the great city in which all who have ships at sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she's been laid waste. What a different perspective, though. They in heaven are told to rejoice. What a different perspective there is from earth to heaven. On earth, it's all, whoa, whoa. They're throwing dust on their heads. But in heaven, it's totally different. Verse 20, rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, because God has pronounced judgment for you against her. So, what causes mourning and woe on earth is causing party and rejoicing in heaven. You see the justice of it from God's side. Now, verse 21, then a strong angel. John, come on, that's what you got? Strong angel. He gives no description. First it says, mighty angel with a mighty voice. And then he says, strong angel picked up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea. All right, forgive me if this seems like a stretch to you, but I want to point out to you that the Son of God used the expression, better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and you'll cast into the sea with it, and to be guilty of causing one of these little ones to stumble who believe in me. If you think it's a stretch, then just ignore me. I think there have been generations of children derailed by pedophile priests in a corrupt system that gets them alone with those children. I don't think this millstone cast into the sea is accidental. By the way, according to Dr. Alfred Edersheim, in his book, Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, he elaborates that that was a common expression in the region of Israel at the time of Christ. With regard to what a burden, what a loss of freedom. Now I'm married and I have children. I'm no longer free. No, it's like the ball and chain. I got a millstone around my neck. As the Son of God said, better to have one and be cast into the sea with it than to be guilty of stumbling one of these little ones. I saw a strong angel. He picked up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, so will Babylon the great city be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer. The sound of the harpists and musicians and flute players and trumpeters will not be heard in you any longer. No craftsman of any craft will be found in you any longer. The sound of a mill will not be heard in you any longer. The light of a lamp will not shine in you any longer. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride will not be heard in you any longer. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. Do you remember similar words spoken by the Son of God, Matthew chapter 23, the same Lord who began his ministry with 8 Beatitudes? Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers. All of that. He ends his ministry with 8 woes, the exact opposite of blessed. 8 woes in Matthew chapter 23 to the religious, corrupt religious leaders. 8 woes. And in those 8 woes, he said, the blood of all the prophets will be required from this generation. From the blood of Abel, Cain's brother, whose blood was crying to Yahweh from the ground. From the blood of Abel to Zechariah, from A to Z. Zechariah, a more contemporary prophet, who was murdered, according to the Son of God, between the temple and the altar. He said, the blood of all the prophets will be required of this generation, the generation that was participants in the betrayal and execution of the Son of God. So in the same way, here, this city, this great city, the epitome of all human ambition, the utopia that every single political system has dreamed of making happen, the history of the world. In her we found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all who've been slain on the earth. So there's that sense in which Babylon, this mystery, is in a sense all the cities of human ambition all through this whole history of man. But will have its ultimate expression in one city, in the tribulation. There. Come on, Ben. There's more to the book of Revelation, only 3 more chapters left, but 19, 20, 21, and 22. That's 4 chapters, huh? Okay. Only those. Let's all stand together. Was that heavy or what? I'm thinking it is. The Lord is going to act in judgment in the tribulation at the end of it all. And there is a city that is going to get the worst judgment any city on earth has ever experienced. And there'll be eyewitnesses crying, screaming, whoa, whoa, what a tragedy, what a loss. How it's going to happen, I don't know. But that is going to happen, that I do know. But please consider, again, contrast between Babel and its tower versus the actual bridge from heaven to earth is a man, not a system, not man-centered anything. It's one man who came down. One man, the Son of Man. He's the connection. Get that. He is the connection. And we have here no permanent city. Everybody who died in faith, Hebrews chapter 11 describes this. Likewise, Hebrews, that even Abraham and his generation, of those who like Abraham, they lived in tents. Why did they live in tents? Why was their lifestyle in tents out in the field instead of in the cities? They were looking for the ultimate city whose builder and maker is God. I'm going to be a city man, when it's that city. I will be as urban as anybody could ever be when that city is the city of God. And that's where the rest of the book of Revelation goes. So I look forward to getting there with you.